I love it when we have real journalism out there. And real journalism, believe it or not, journalists, involves people looking into you too, which is why I'm so excited to have the editor-in-chief of Breitbart himself, Alex Marlow, joining me now because he has a new book out. How often do I tell you to go buy a book? I don't do that. I don't come on here and sell books for you. You need to go get this book. The book is called Breaking the News, Exposing the Establishment Media's Hidden Deals and Secret Corruption. Alex, first of all, before we get into the contents of your book, and we will in a second, I want to know what kind of a sadist sits down to write a book. When I have to write like a 1,000-word article, I get sick to my stomach. I feel like I want to vomit.
Jesse, you're so right about this. Everyone told me it was so hard, and I'm lucky enough to have a lot of author friends to give me wisdom along the way. And they all said, my first recommendation is don't do it. It's not going to be worth it. But it was worth it. No, I loved it. It was harder than it looks and more time consuming. And I was very lucky to have some real top-notch researchers that were able to help me. And we dug so deep in the media. We spent a full year. There's 1,200 endnotes, as you see at the end of the book. And we found some really explosive stuff.
Okay, let's. I don't want to obviously have you give away the whole thing, but let's talk about this. When I hear about Obama guys all of a sudden helping run the New York Times, I say to myself, well, that actually makes so much sense now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we found a lot of characters and corporate boards for these major establishment media players that were direct ties to the Obama administration or the Biden administration. It was kind of unbelievable when you break it down. There's one of the top Obama insiders is a member of Facebook's board, a guy who helped Obama launch his career. If you look at The Atlantic, it's run by this thing called the Emerson Collective with a bunch of former Obama alumni, White House personnel from the Obama now running The Atlantic. And it goes all throughout the establishment media. One of my favorite ones that no one points out, there's a lady named Karine Jean-Pierre. You might have seen her do the press briefing yesterday. She's the deputy press secretary. She's married to a woman who's an anchor of CNN, Suzanne Malveaux. And it just goes on from there, Jesse.
Alex, can you help me explain this before we go into a couple other things in here? Why was Obama so successful at spreading his people, not just throughout the media, throughout the bureaucracy? It seems like Obama was masterful at this, at making sure his people were everywhere. How did he pull this off?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I have an easy answer, but I do think that he did play into that Messiah complex that so much of the left had with him, that he was their savior, and he gave this sense of calm, this aura, that he had all the answers, and pretty much everyone does exactly what he says on the left. Have you ever heard anyone on the left defying Obama? It's never heard. You never hear about it. Trump, every other story was there was someone in the White House standing up to Trump and a big throwdown in the White House. Trump was literally hiring people. I mean, think about John Kelly. Trump hated John Kelly, and he made him his chief of staff. Obama never did anything like that. It was it was all family and friends in the Obama White House, and now throughout the establishment left.
Speaking of Trump really briefly, was that a screw-up on Trump's part? Now, as everybody knows, I loved Trump's presidency, but I crushed him on his absurd spending and his hiring and firing. But his defenders, I've had him on my show a million times, will come on and tell me he did the best he could. There weren't people to hire. And honestly, it doesn't sound like there were people to hire. Is that correct?
I don't know. I'm sure it's some of that, but it's very hard to look back at his personnel choices and to be thrilled as someone who was a very early adopter to Trump. I've been editor-in-chief of Breitbart for a long time now, and when he came down that escalator and started to lay out this vision of a solid border and ripping up NAFTA and empowering the working people and standing up to China and standing up to tech and really having the back of the populace within the United States, it was so exciting, but he didn't hire the people to execute on that vision. So I think they were probably out there, and they were probably not as empowered.
Yeah. All right, Alex. Now, everyone's seen Chuck Todd interview all these big shots, all these big shots. Every senator, Tom, Dick, and Harry, who wanted to be president of the United States, they all go sit down with Chuck Todd. He also sat down with Amy Klobuchar several times. Was that the first time they ever met?
It was not. It's such a great setup. No, this was really amazing discovery in the book. So there was one story about a year ago, the New York Post put out that Chuck Todd was actually Amy Klobuchar's landlord, which is, I think, a very mild way of putting it. It's Amy Klobuchar wrote a check to Chuck Todd every month and handed him a check and said, here you go, Chuck. Here is some money so that I can live in your place. And during that time, or I guess if you extend the window a little bit, Chuck Todd interviewed Amy Klobuchar at least 8 times that I counted. And I had my head of research, Jacob McLeod. He had to watch every second of every interview. And I said, I'll pay you time and a half, but you got to go through it. I want to see if there is a single disclosure, not one disclosure during these 8 interviews, that Chuck Todd was literally getting a check from Klobuchar every month as his as her alleged landlord. Not to mention, Chuck Todd's wife is a Bernie Sanders consultant and has made about $2.5 million, which is pretty good for a socialist. $2.5 million advising the Sanders campaigns over the last two election cycles. You can't make this stuff up, Jesse.
$2.5 million. I got to start working for the communists. I'm telling you what. All right, I saw the Hunter Biden thing. And sometimes I do this, Alex, because everyone knows I'm a partisan hack. I don't pretend to be otherwise. I'm a bloodthirsty right-winger. That's who I am. But I try to look at a story and say to myself, did I get something wrong? Am I missing something? This is from Breaking the News. Secret Service records show Hunter Biden took at least 23 flights through Joint Base Andrews, home of the Air Force One and Air Force Two. Now, okay, is there an innocent explanation for the son of the then vice president taking 23 flights?
I think if there were, I think we'd have heard from Hunter by now. So I tried to see if I could fly out of Joint Base Andrews. So I went over to kayak.com. I use whatever the services are. Apparently, you have to know someone with access to Air Force One or Air Force Two, if you want to fly out of there, or someone very high up in the American government. I'm chuckling a little bit, Jesse, but it's really horrifying because this reveals that Hunter Biden was probably on a huge chunk, maybe all of Joe Biden's international trips, flying with Joe, and we were told by Joe multiple times that he never discussed business with Hunter. Well, we know there's evidence to the contrary, but what do you think they discussed, and what on earth was Hunter doing? Secret Service records show 411 trips during the window of 2011 and 2016 by Hunter to 29 countries, including 23 that originated at or ended at Joint Base Andrews. I assume Joe Biden was on many of these, if not most of them. I assume they were talking business, and this will never be explained because the media will not demand answers. The media must demand answers on this story.
411 trips, 29 countries. The dude flies more than a stewardess. Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me. Thanks.